Hello my friends, this is a story I'd like to tell you about something that happened a long time ago. I was at the home of my friend. I now know he thought the last image of his dead wife, taken the day she died, would bring him comfort, but instead it brought new horror. Seated in a large armchair near the fire, his elbows on his knees, his hands held out to the warmth, he was talking slowly, interrupting himself abruptly now and again with a murmured, "Yes, yes," as if he were trying to gather up, to make sure of his memories. Then he would continue his sentence. The table beside him was littered with papers, books, odds and ends of various kinds. The lamp was turned low. I could see nothing of him except his pallid face and his hands, long and thin in the firelight. The purring of his cat that lay on the hearthrug and the crackling of the logs that sent up strangely shaped flames were the only sounds that broke the silence. He was speaking in a faraway voice, as a man might in his sleep. "Yes, yes, it was great, the greatest misfortune of my life. I could have borne anything, the loss of every penny I possess, of my health, anything, everything, but not that. To have lived for 10 years with a woman you adore, and then watch her die, and left to face life alone, quite alone. It was almost more than I could bear. It is 6 months since I lost her, 6 months since I buried her. How long ago it seemed, and how short the days used to be. If only she had been ill for some time, if only there had been some warning. It seems a horrible thing to say, but you know, if you know beforehand, the mind gets prepared, doesn't it? Little by little, the heart readjusts its outlook. You grow used to the idea. But as it was... "But I thought she was ill for some time," I asked. He shook his head. "Not at all, not at all. It was quite sudden. The doctors were never even able to find out what the matter was with her. It all happened, and it was over in 2 days. Since then, I don't know or how or why I go on living. All day long I wander around this old house looking for some reminder of her that I never find, imagining she will appear to me from behind the hangings, that a breath of her scent will come to me from an empty room." He stretched out his hand towards the lamp. "Look, yesterday I found that, this veil, in one of my pockets. She gave it to me to carry one evening when we were at the theatre, and I tried to believe it still smells of her perfume, is still warm from the contact with her face. But no, nothing remains except sorrow. Though there is something, only it... In the first shock of grief, you sometimes have extraordinary ideas, don't you? Can you believe that I photographed my beautiful wife, her laying on her deathbed, died, and I still took a nice photograph of her. I took my camera into the white silent room. I lit the magnesium wire. Yes, overwhelmed as I was with grief, I did the most scrupulous precaution and care things from which I should shrink today, revolting things. Yet it is a great consolation to know she is there, that I shall be able to see her again as she looked that day." "Where is the photograph?" I asked. Leaning forward, he replied in a low voice, "I haven't got it, or rather I have it. I have the plate, but I have never developed it. It is still in the camera. I have never had the courage to touch it, yet how I long for it, just to see my loved one." He laid his hand on my arm. "Listen, tonight, your visit, the way I have been able to talk about her, it makes me feel better, almost strong again. Will you come with me into the dark room? Will you help me to develop the plate?" He looked into my face with the anxiousness, questioning expression of a child who fears he may be refused something he longs to have. Of course I will, I answered. He rose quickly. Yes, with you it will be different. With you I shall feel calm, and it will do me good. I shall be much happier, you'll see. We went into the dark room, a closet with bottles ranged around on shelves. A trestle table littered with dishes, glasses and books ran along one wall. By the light of a candle that threw flickers shadows around him, he examined in silence the labels on the bottles and rubbed some dishes. Presently he lit a lamp with red glass, blew out the candle and said to me, "Shut the door." There was something dramatic about the darkness, relieved only by the blood-red light. Unexpected reflections touched the sides of bottles and played on his wrinkled chest, cheeks, and temples. He said, "Is the door closed shut? Closed tightly? Then I will begin." He opened the dark side of a plate and threw out the slide, and took out the plate itself, holding it carefully at the corners between his thumb and first fingers. He looked at it intently for a long time, as if trying to see the invisible picture which would soon appear. "There she is," he murmured. "How wonderful!" With great care he let the slide into the bath and began to rock the dish. I cannot say why, but it seems to me that the tapping of the porcelain on the boards at regular intervals made a curiously mournful sound. The monotonous lapping of the liquid suggested a vague sobbing, and I could not lift my eyes from the milk-coloured piece of glass which was slowly taking on a darker line around the edges. I looked at my friend. His lips were trembling, and he murmured words and sentences which I failed to catch. He drew out the plate, held it up to his eyes, and as I leant over his shoulder explained, "It's coming up, slowly. My developer is rather weak, you see, but that's nothing. Look, the highlights are coming. Wait, you'll see, you'll see." He put the plate back, and it sank into the developer with a soft sucking sound. The grey colour had spread uniformly over the whole plate. He explained, his head lowered. "That dark rectangle is the bed. Up above that square," he pointed it out with a motion of his chin, "is the pillow, and in the middle, that lighter part of the pale streak outline on the background. That's it, look, there is the crucifix I put between her fingers. My poor little one, my poor darling." His voice was hoarse with emotion. The tears were running down his cheeks as his chest rose and fell. "The details are coming up," he said presently, trying to control himself. "I can see the lighted candles and the flowers, her hair, which was so beautiful, the hands of which she was so proud, and the little yellow rosary that I found in her book of hours. My God, how it hurts to see it all again. Yet somehow it makes me happy, very happy. I shall see her once again, my poor darling." Feeling that emotion was overcoming him and wishing to soothe him, I said, "Don't you think the plate is ready now?" He held it up near the lamp, examined it closely and put it back into the bath. After a short interval he drew it out afresh, re-examined it and again put it back, murmuring, "No, no, no." Something in the tone of his voice and the abruptness of his gesture struck me, but I had no time to think, as he at once began to speak again. "There are still some details to come up. It's rather long, but as I told you, my developer is weak, so they only come up one by one, you see." He counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. "This time it will do. If I force it, I shall spoil it." He took the plate out, waved it vertically up and down, dipped it in clean water and held it towards me. "Look." But as I stretched out my hand, he started and bent forward, holding the plate up to his lamp, and his face, lit up by the light, had suddenly become so ghastly that I cried, "What is it? What is it? What's the matter?" His eyes were fixed in a wide, terrified stare. His lips were drawn back and showed teeth that were chattering. I could hear his heart beating in a way that made the whole body rock backwards and forwards. I put my hand on his shoulder, and unable to imagine what could possibly cause such terrible anguish, I cried for the second time, "But what is it? Tell me, what's the matter?" He turned his face to me, so drawn it no longer seemed human, and his bloodshot eyes locked into mine. He seized me by the wrist with a grip that sent nails into my flesh. Twice he opened his mouth trying to speak, then brandished the plate above his head. He shrieked into the crimson light darkness, "No, no! My God, I have murdered her! She wasn't dead! The eyes are open!" On realizing I went cold and felt weak and dizzy, I thought any moment my legs would collapse from under me. I let out a silent scream that seemed to come from inside my head. 6 months to this day, 6 months ago, she was laid in her coffin, then the lid nailed down shut tight. The coffin with her went to the cemetery and lowered into a dark, damp hole, then the hole filled in. I snatched the photograph. I looked closer at her eyes and realized they were not the eyes of a dead person, but her eyes were begging for help. He fell to his knees. "Oh my God, forgive me for what I have done."
That's great, kid.